It was a usual 3 a.m. when I found myself hunched over my laptop, cross-legged on the apartment floor. The blue glow of the screen was the only thing keeping me awake, surrounded by empty coffee cups and crumpled sticky notes. Another milestone had passed, another successful code launch, another small step toward something big, something I'd been working on in secret for the last 3 years. I wasn't just anyone. I wasn't just my father's daughter. I was Na, a woman with a side life no one knew about. My phone buzzed. Where are those quarterly projections, Na? The board meeting's in 4 hours. It was Dad, Mason Clayton. All business, no empathy. His voice was tight with disappointment, the kind that made my stomach churn. Just finishing them now, I lied, quickly minimizing my startup's dashboard and pulling up the family business spreadsheets. You'll have them in 20 minutes. I hit send and immediately glanced at the clock, 8 minutes to spare. Make it 10 and don't forget the strategy meeting at 9. As if that wasn't enough, he hung up before I could respond. Typical. I rubbed my eyes and turned back to the screen, sending a quick message to my dev team in Singapore. Great work, everyone. Launch is still on track for next month. The sun was starting to rise, the quiet of the early morning giving me a brief respite. I let myself collapse into bed, but sleep didn't come easy. A mere 2 hours later, my phone lit up again. Darling, you look terrible. It was Mom. Her flawless face filled my screen as I rubbed my tired eyes. Have you been staying up late again? You know how important family breakfast is to your father. Sorry, Mom. Lost track of time, working on those projections. Well, at least you're dedicated to the business. Unlike last month when you missed that crucial supplier meeting, she let the guilt hit me where it hurt. Tatum had to handle it alone. Poor thing. Tatum, the golden child, had been the perfect daughter. Always present, always reliable, always doing exactly what our parents wanted. I couldn't help but clench my jaw. I'll be there in 30 minutes, I promised, already reaching for the shower. The Clayton Textiles building loomed over me as I parked in the lot. The place always felt like a prison to me, stuck in the past with its outdated architecture. My real office, the one where I was revolutionizing the future of supply chain management, was in a modern co-working space downtown. But here, this felt like stepping into another world, one where they saw me as nothing more than a daughter, not the force I was becoming. There's my little sister, Tatum's voice echoed as I entered the conference room. Finally decided to grace us with your presence. I managed to smile and sat beside Paxton, our business consultant. He gave me a knowing look, and I had a feeling he was starting to catch on. Now that we're all here, Dad began, let's discuss the upcoming quarter. Nah, your projections? I plugged in my laptop, presenting the numbers I'd barely finished crafting earlier. Numbers that showed modest improvement while hiding how much I was secretly helping behind the scenes with my tech expertise. Tatum leaned forward, eyes sharp. These numbers seem optimistic. What's the basis for this growth projection? Before I could respond, my phone buzzed again. It was Harper, my biggest investor, the one person who truly understood why I was living this double life. I ignored it for now, but my heart raced. My other phone, the one my family didn't know about, buzzed relentlessly in my pocket. It was time to make a decision. Harper wouldn't be patient much longer. I smiled despite my exhaustion, trying to keep the cool facade. The Asan market is showing promising signs. We can roll out the new inventory system next quarter, Dad interrupted. Nah, we've talked about this. Our business was built on relationships, not computers. I wanted to scream, to tell him how the same technology he dismissed was on the verge of saving the company from its own demise. But I kept my calm. Finally, I excused myself to take the call. Harper, what's up? Where have you been? Harper's voice cut through the tension. The Series B investors are ready to move. They want to meet tomorrow. This was it. The moment we'd been working for. I couldn't afford to let my family stand in the way any longer. I can't just drop everything, I whispered, glancing over my shoulder. The last thing I needed was for someone to hear me. You've built something extraordinary, Harper said. Are you really going to let your family's outdated expectations hold you back? The weight of his words hit me harder than I wanted to admit. As I ended the call, I heard Mom calling from down the hall. Nah, the meeting's waiting. I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. A life built on lies, on family obligations, or one built on freedom and innovation. Something had to give. My phone buzzed one last time. A text from Reed, my childhood friend, turned business confidant. Remember who you really are. I took a deep breath. My decision had been made. Soon, they'd all know exactly who I was. The next morning, I arrived early at Clayton Textiles. The place was still empty, the quiet hum of the fluorescent lights overhead echoing through the halls as I made my way toward Dad's office. The familiar scent of leather and coffee filled the air, but there was something different about today. I couldn't quite place it, but the usual tension in my chest was replaced with something else, a sense of inevitability. I pushed open the door to Dad's office, and he barely looked up from the paperwork strewn across his desk. "Right on time," he muttered. "Take a seat." Tatum was already there, of course, sitting up straight, her perfect hair framing her face like a model in a commercial. Mom sat beside her, her gaze sharp as always, as if she could see through every word I was about to say. "We've been talking," Dad began, finally meeting my eyes. "It's time we discuss succession planning." My heart skipped a beat, and for a moment the air in the room seemed to thicken. This was it, the moment I'd been dreading. The moment they would finally acknowledge what I could bring to the table, or not. I felt the weight of my phone in my pocket, Harper's constant texts, reminders about the investor meeting. They were waiting for me, and yet here I was, trapped in a conversation I couldn't avoid. Dad continued, his voice calmer now. "Nah, you've shown remarkable improvement lately. Your projections, yesterday's numbers," he paused, flipping through some papers. "They made me realize you might be ready for more responsibility." Tatum's eyes widened, and I could practically hear the gears grinding in her head. This wasn't the plan she had in mind. "I've been here consistently," she interjected, her voice tight with restraint. "I've been the one carrying the load all these years." Dad didn't even look at her. "Na has a fresh perspective. We need that now." He turned to me. "I'm appointing you as Director of Operations. Effective immediately." My breath caught in my throat. This was the moment I'd been building up to for years, but it felt hollow. He wasn't offering me the role because he believed in my skills. He was offering it because he saw how much I'd been quietly handling in the background, and he wanted to control it, to keep me tethered to this family business. Tatum opened her mouth, about to protest, but Dad cut her off. "Let's not make this complicated," he said, his tone final. "This is your chance, Na." A chill ran through me. I glanced at Mom. Her hands, always so perfectly manicured, were now twisting together in her lap, like she was preparing for something I couldn't quite name. I took a deep breath, fighting the urge to laugh. This was the same man who'd shut down every one of my tech proposals for years. The same man who had ridiculed the idea of integrating technology into their business model. Now, just when I was ready to expose my secret life, he was offering me the position. I glanced down at my phone. Reed had sent a message, the first words flashing across the screen. "The investors are still waiting. Nah, this could be your moment." But as much as I wanted to pull away and let it all go, to simply join forces with the team I had been building, I knew I couldn't do that, not yet. Not while everything still felt like a game. "I need some time," I said, my voice steady despite the tornado of thoughts in my mind. 24 hours maybe. I want to give this the thought it deserves." Dad's expression darkened, the familiar frown pulling at the corners of his mouth. He stared at me for a long moment before replying. "This isn't a negotiation, Na. This is your birthright, your responsibility." I couldn't hold back the laugh that bubbled up. Birthright? Responsibility? He had no idea. No clue how much I'd been carrying all these years, not for him, not for Tatum, but for me. "Fine," I said, standing up. "I'll think about it. But tomorrow, I want to present my complete vision for the company's future." "In the boardroom?" Tatum scoffed, rolling her eyes in that way that only she could. "Since when do you make demands?" I shot her a look, my mind racing. "Since now." I walked out of Dad's office and immediately pulled out my phone, dialing Harper before I even made it to the door. "Harper, I'm going to need you to stall the investors for a bit longer," I said, my voice low. "I need 24 hours to prepare." "No problem," Harper replied, a hint of excitement in his voice. "We've got this, Nah. Just keep your head in the game." As I made my way toward the elevator, I noticed Paxton, the business consultant, watching me from the hallway. He wasn't saying anything, but his eyes were sharp, calculating. He knew something was going on. He had to. But I wasn't worried about Paxton. I had a bigger fish to fry. I had 3 days to get everything in order. 3 days to change the course of my life. The whole family would see the truth soon enough. That evening, I met Reed at my office. The quiet hum of the building barely audible as we worked together to finalize the presentation for the board. Every slide was designed to show the truth about Clayton Textiles, the truth they had refused to acknowledge for so long. The market trends, the numbers, the opportunities they were blind to. But it wasn't just about the company anymore, it was about me. It was about finally stepping into the life I'd been crafting in secret. "I can't believe it's finally happening," Reed said, leaning back in his chair, his fingers tapping nervously on the table. "It's happening," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "And when it does, nothing will be the same." As the hours passed, I worked tirelessly on the presentation, making sure every detail was perfect. When I looked up, it was almost dawn. I hadn't realized how much time had passed, but I didn't care. I couldn't afford to care. This was the moment, and I was going to make sure they remembered it. I sent one last text to my team in Singapore. "We're ready. Let's make history." The phone buzzed in my pocket. Another message from Reed. "Remember, this is your time." As I stepped out of the office and into the early morning light, I couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement. The meeting with my family would come soon enough. But first, I had a much bigger battle to face, the one that would change everything. Tomorrow, the board would know who I really was, and so would they. The day of the board meeting arrived faster than I expected. By the time the sun had barely peeked over the horizon, I was already pacing in front of my laptop, making final tweaks to the presentation. My mind was racing. The weight of what was about to happen, what I was about to reveal, was almost too much to bear. I had a vision, a future I'd been working toward for years, and today was the day everything would shift. Harper's words echoed in my head, "This is your time." He didn't know how right he was. But it wasn't just about the business anymore. It was about me stepping out from behind the shadows. It was about showing my family that I was more than the dutiful daughter they thought they knew. I grabbed my coffee, the bitterness hitting my tongue just the way I needed it to. I was ready. As I entered Clayton Textiles' glass and brick building, the morning light cast long shadows across the floor, making the place feel even more oppressive than usual. The familiar hum of the elevator was the only sound breaking the silence. The cool air inside the building felt foreign. I wasn't sure if it was the tension in the air or the gnawing feeling in my gut, but it wasn't the same sense of home I used to have. I made my way to the boardroom, my footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. It wasn't until I stepped into the conference room that I saw them, my parents, Tatum, and the rest of the board members. Everyone was already in their seats, their conversations dying down as I entered. My father was sitting at the head of the table, looking as cold and calculating as ever. "Ah, nah, you're here," he said, barely lifting his eyes from the papers in front of him. His tone didn't change, still business, still emotionless. Tatum flashed me a tight smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. She was nervous, I could tell, maybe even a little scared. She didn't know what was coming, but I did. This was it, the moment everything changed. "Let's get started," Dad said, his voice carrying an air of finality. I took my seat, the cold leather of the chair pressing against my back as I opened my laptop. The screen flickered to life, showing the polished projections I'd prepared the night before. Numbers, graphs, future growth, all the things they expected to see. But there was something else hidden beneath it, something they hadn't anticipated. My real vision, the one that would turn their world upside down. "All right, you have the floor," Dad said, his eyes now trained on me. There was a strange calm in his voice, but I could hear the underlying tension. He was waiting for me to prove myself or to fail. I clicked to the first slide. The room was silent as the data filled the screen, each chart showing the steady, gradual improvements I had projected. But it was the next slide, the one with the shocking numbers, that I knew would get their attention. "Let's talk about where we are now," I began, my voice steady. "Clayton Textiles has been running on legacy systems, relying on outdated methods. I know this company, I've been inside it for years. I've seen the inefficiencies, the missed opportunities. But here's the truth. The world has changed, and so must we." Dad's gaze hardened, but he didn't interrupt. Tatum, however, was shifting in her seat. She didn't like where this was going. Over the past year, I've been working on a solution, I continued. A system that's capable of modernizing everything we do. From inventory management to real-time tracking, everything can be automated. We're behind the curve, but that doesn't mean we can't catch up. We have the power to not only survive, but to lead. I clicked to the next slide, showing the numbers that told the real story, the figures that would make them realize just how much I had been helping in the background. The revenue my tech had generated, the cost-saving measures I had silently implemented, all of it was hidden in plain sight. These numbers, I said, represent the savings in revenue generated by the technology I've developed. Tatum's face flushed. Her hands tightened into fists. She hadn't seen this coming. None of them had. Are you telling us this is from your tech? Dad asked, his voice tight with disbelief. You've been working on this behind our backs? I nodded. Yes. While you've been focusing on relationships and tradition, I've been focused on the future. The room went quiet. I could see it in their faces, the realization that their daughter had been quietly saving the company while they dismissed every one of her ideas. The anger and betrayal in Dad's eyes were palpable, but it didn't faze me. This was the moment I had waited for. No more hiding, no more playing by their rules. I've built a company, Dad, I said, my voice unwavering. A company that's worth millions. And if Clayton Textiles wants to survive, we have two choices. We can either merge, bring my tech into the fold, and take this company into the modern age, or we can keep doing things the old way. But I won't keep playing the dutiful daughter if you choose the latter. Dad's face twisted in anger, but I could see something else behind it, fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of change, fear that everything he had built could come crashing down. Paxton, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, suddenly spoke up. Mason, I think you should listen to her. This technology, what Nina's built, it's exactly what Clayton Textiles needs right now. Tatum shot him a sharp look, but Paxton didn't back down. He was right. The market was changing, and I had the solution. The room had fallen into an eerie silence, and I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. I'm offering you a partnership, I said, turning back to Dad. This isn't about me taking over, it's about us evolving. But if you don't want to take that step, if you want to hold on to the past, I'll walk away. My team and I will be just fine without you. There was a long pause before Dad spoke again, his voice tight. You're asking me to risk everything for your startup? He scoffed, shaking his head. What makes you think I'd give up what I've built for something that isn't even proven? I let out a small laugh. You think Clayton Textiles is the only thing I've built? You're wrong, Dad. I've been building something better, something that's already proven itself. I clicked to the final slide, showing the numbers from the previous year. A year where my tech had single-handedly saved the company from financial ruin. Here's what happens next, I said, my voice cold. You either join me and we take this company to heights it's never known, or we part ways, and you can watch as I build something bigger, better, and more modern than anything you could have ever dreamed of. I looked around the room, meeting each of their gazes. Tatum's eyes were wide with disbelief. Mom's face twisted with concern. Dad, however, sat back in his chair, his hands clasped in front of him, studying me. Finally, he spoke, his voice quieter now. This is your plan? I nodded. Yes, this is the future. For a moment, everything seemed to hang in the balance. I could feel the weight of the decision, the tension in the air thick enough to cut with a knife. And then, slowly, Dad stood up. All right, nah, show me what you've got. As Dad stood up, the room seemed to shrink around me. For a moment, I wondered if I'd pushed too hard. But then I remembered everything I had already sacrificed, the countless nights spent building something from the ground up, the quiet moments when I'd kept my dreams to myself, because no one had ever taken me seriously. No more. Today, the truth would be laid bare. I had earned this moment, and there was no turning back now. All right, nah, Dad said, his voice colder now, but somehow more measured. Show me what you've got. I clicked to the next slide, the one I had prepared just for this moment. The financial data filled the screen, but it wasn't just about numbers. It was about everything I had built. My company, my team, the revenue we'd generated, the efficiencies we'd introduced, the partnerships we'd secured. Over the past year, I began, my voice steady but fierce. My software saved Clayton Textiles millions. These are the real numbers. The ones that show how much you've been relying on me without even knowing it. A collective gasp spread through the room. I felt my heart beat louder in my chest as I scanned their faces. Tatum's mouth opened, but no words came out. Mom's hand was clutching the armrest of her chair, her knuckles white. Dad's eyes were locked on the screen, but I could see the flicker of disbelief in them. This system, I continued, has optimized everything from supply chain management to customer relations. It streamlined operations, cut costs, and increased revenue. And none of you even knew it was happening. Tatum finally found her voice. You've been running this company behind our backs? Her tone was sharp, and I could feel the sting in her words, but I didn't flinch. Not behind your backs, I corrected. Right under your noses. I've been doing what needed to be done. It was never about you not trusting me, Tatum. It's about you never even asking me what I could do. Dad's silence was deafening. I could see his jaw clench as he processed the information. He didn't want to admit it, but he was beginning to understand. Everything I had done was for this moment, to prove I wasn't just the dutiful daughter he expected me to be. I was more than that. I was a force. I don't understand, Dad said finally, his voice strained. You've been doing this secretly? Without consulting anyone? Without letting us in on any of it? It wasn't about secrecy, I explained, choosing my words carefully. It was about survival. I've been protecting this company from the inside, Dad. Every time you dismissed my ideas, I took matters into my own hands. If you had just listened. Don't start, Tatum interrupted, standing up. You think we haven't been working hard enough? You think we haven't tried everything to keep this place afloat? Her voice wavered with frustration. You've tried, Tatum, I said, my voice cold but resolute. But you've been fighting the wrong battle. You've been trying to hold on to a business model that's outdated. Technology wasn't just an idea, it was the future. It is the future. And I've been the one building it. Stop, Tatum snapped. This isn't about your tech or whatever. This is about family. You're throwing all of us under the bus for your little startup. Do you even care about what this company means to us? To Dad? I stood up from my chair, my gaze meeting hers. I care more than you think. That's why I did it this way. I couldn't just sit back and watch everything you've been clinging to crumble. But it's time to face the truth. Things have to change. I turned back to the screen, clicking through the slides that showcased the tech advancements my company had already implemented. The metrics, the success stories, the client testimonials that proved how much potential was still locked inside Clayton Textiles if only they would open their eyes. These improvements, I continued, weren't just pulled out of thin air. They're the result of hours of work, late nights, and most importantly, innovation. The same kind of innovation you've been dismissing for years. I built this company from the inside out, and now I'm giving you the opportunity to join me, to merge our futures. Together, we can lead this industry into the next phase. The room was silent again. The tension hung in the air, thick and suffocating. It was like waiting for a storm to hit, knowing it was coming but unsure of what damage it would cause. The board members exchanged nervous glances, unsure of which way the tide would turn. And then it happened. Dad stood up slowly, his face hardening. He looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in years, and I saw something I hadn't expected, pride. You really did it, didn't you? He asked quietly, almost to himself. You really built something extraordinary. I nodded. I told you I would. You've done what I failed to see, he admitted, his voice quiet but steady. I was so focused on keeping things the way they were that I ignored the fact that the world was moving on without us. Tatum's face turned bright red with fury. You're actually listening to her? You're willing to throw away everything for some tech startup? Dad didn't even look at her. His eyes never left me. Nah, he said, his voice firm now. You've proven yourself. More than I ever expected. There it was. The acknowledgement I'd been waiting for. The words I'd never thought I'd hear from him. But they weren't enough. Not yet. But, he continued, his expression hardening once more, this is still my company. And it's not just yours to decide. If we're going to do this, it's going to be on my terms. Understand? I stood there for a moment, absorbing his words. And then I realized something. He wasn't going to give up his position without a fight. He was still holding on to the past, even if he knew it wasn't enough. I understand, I said quietly. But it's not just about the company anymore. It's about me too. And I won't wait forever. The room was still. No one spoke. Dad's eyes were searching mine, as if he was trying to figure out if I was bluffing. I'll give you 3 days, he said at last. 3 days to convince me. Show me what this company can really be with you at the helm, and then we'll decide if this partnership works. I smiled. It wasn't the victory I'd expected, but it was a step forward. A small one, but a step nonetheless. Deal, I said. The days that followed were a blur of preparation, adrenaline, and constant messages from Harper. 3 days. That's what I had to convince Dad, that this was more than just a passing phase, more than just a whim. The clock was ticking, and every second felt like it carried the weight of the world. My tech startup was ready to soar if I could make the right moves, if I could convince my family that this was the future. But they were holding on to something that was crumbling beneath them, and I couldn't afford to let them drag me down with it. I spent hours refining my pitch, pulling in every success story, every partnership, every piece of data I had gathered in the last few years. This wasn't just about selling them on an idea. This was about survival, about creating something bigger than the company they had built on tradition and old-school business practices. But my father? He wasn't going to hand over control easily. I knew that. I'd need to show him the truth, force him to face what I had already seen, that the future wasn't just about relationships, it was about innovation. I was sitting in my office late that night, the glow of my screen illuminating my face, when my phone buzzed. Harper's name flashed across the screen. Talk to me, I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. They're all in the conference room. Nah, your 3 days are up. It's time. I paused, letting his words sink in. This was it, the moment I had worked for, the moment my entire future could change. I could feel my heart pounding, but my voice was calm when I replied, I'm ready. I took a deep breath, closed my laptop, and grabbed my bag. I had spent my entire life preparing for this moment. I wasn't going to let fear stop me now, not after everything I had built. The drive to the Clayton Textiles building felt longer than it ever had before. I could see it looming in the distance, like an old friend I had outgrown, a reminder of everything that had held me back. The night was quiet as I parked, the city streets dark and empty. Inside the building, the fluorescent lights flickered overhead as I made my way to the conference room. When I entered, Dad was already sitting at the head of the table, his usual commanding presence in full force. Tatum sat across from him, her arms crossed, her expression a mix of disbelief and frustration. Mom sat beside her, looking unusually calm, too calm for my liking. The rest of the board members were gathered, their faces drawn in serious lines. They were waiting for me. I took my seat, the chair creaking under me. I could feel the eyes of the room on me, but I didn't flinch. I wasn't the same person I had been when I started this journey. I had found my voice, and I wasn't going to let anyone silence it now. Dad glanced at me, his eyes narrowing slightly as he gestured for me to begin. You've got your 3 days. Let's see what you've got. I nodded, and with a calm I didn't quite feel, I opened my laptop and projected the first slide onto the screen. The numbers and graphs were familiar by now. They were what they had been expecting. Modest projections, predictable growth. But that wasn't the message I had for them. I clicked to the next slide. This is what you've been relying on, I said, my voice firm. This is the future you've built your company on: outdated systems, outdated practices, and a reliance on relationships that are slowly eroding. The market is changing, and so are your customers. But here's what I built. I clicked again, revealing the data from my startup software. The graphs were no longer just projections, they were results. Real growth, real savings, real solutions. Last year, the system I created saved Clayton Textiles over $12 million. I continued, watching their faces. In the next quarter, with this system fully integrated, we could see that number increase by another 40%. You don't need to just survive. You can lead this industry. Tatum scoffed, her eyes narrowing in disbelief. You're seriously going to sit here and tell us that your little startup is the future of Clayton Textiles? That it's worth throwing everything we've built away? Her words stung, but I didn't flinch. I was prepared for her attack. This wasn't about me proving my worth to her anymore. It was about showing Dad that I had a vision they couldn't ignore. I'm not asking you to throw anything away, Tatum, I said, my voice calm. I'm asking you to evolve, to recognize that the world is changing. And if you want to stay relevant, if you want this company to survive, it's time to adapt. And that's what I'm offering you, a chance to join the future. Dad's eyes never left the screen. He wasn't reacting the way I expected him to, not with anger, not with rejection. He was watching, waiting. Maybe he was finally seeing it, finally realizing what I had been telling him all these years. I've built this company, I continued, my voice growing bolder. Not just this one, but the future of every company that wants to stay ahead. And I'm offering you a seat at the table, a partnership, not as my family, not as the people who raised me, but as equal players in the future we can build together. But if you don't take it, you'll get left behind. There was a long pause. I could see the gears turning in Dad's mind. I knew he was close, but there was still something holding him back, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. I think you've proven your point. Nah, Dad said finally, his voice quieter than usual. You've built something impressive. But I'm not just going to hand over the company. If we're going to do this, it's going to be on my terms. I felt a rush of frustration, but I kept it in check. What does that mean, Dad? What terms? He stood up, walking around the room slowly, his hands clasped behind his back. He looked at each of the board members, then at me. I want to see a full integration plan, he said. A plan that includes how your technology will integrate with Clayton Textiles' current operations. I want to see proof that this will not just work, but thrive in the long run. Fine, I said, my tone sharp. I'll have that for you by the end of the week. Mom's voice broke the silence. Mason, she said quietly, almost nervously, are you sure this is the right thing to do? Letting her take over, Dad held up his hand to silence her. I've seen the numbers. I've seen what she can do. If we're going to survive, we need to make this work. I knew what he was thinking. This was the beginning of something new, the beginning of a partnership, not just between me and the company, but between me and my family. They didn't know it yet, but this was where everything would change, and I wasn't going to let them stand in my way. Not now. I'll give you the plan, Dad, but after that, it's up to you. And just so we're clear, I'm not here to ask for permission. I'm here to take what I've built and make it bigger. Make it something that'll outlive everything you've ever done. So you can either be part of that or you can watch from the sidelines. But it's happening either way. I stood up, my chair scraping across the floor, and walked toward the door. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was truly in control. See you in a few days, I said, and without looking back, I left the room. The next few days felt like a blur of tension and anticipation. Every waking moment was consumed by the integration plan I was preparing for Clayton Textiles, as Dad had requested. It wasn't just about impressing him anymore. It was about proving to myself that I had built something worthy of standing on its own, worthy of becoming a legacy, not just a side project. Harper and I had spent late nights refining the details of the plan. We mapped out the integration of my software, highlighting every step it would take to transform Clayton Textiles into a modern, competitive powerhouse. I knew that the numbers alone wouldn't be enough. It had to be about showing Dad and the board just how powerful my vision could be, how much they were risking by sticking with the status quo. The day of the presentation arrived quickly, as everything seemed to. I barely slept the night before. There was a restless energy in me, an almost electric charge that I couldn't shake. The gravity of what was at stake, the chance to finally claim my space in this world, kept me awake, mind racing with every possible outcome. But I was ready. I walked into the conference room at Clayton Textiles with my heart pounding, but my expression steady. Dad was sitting at the head of the table again, his eyes fixed on me with that calculating look I had come to know so well. Tatum was seated beside him, her arms folded tightly across her chest, a frown etched into her face. The board members were present, each one staring at me expectantly. The weight of their eyes on me was palpable, but I didn't let it rattle me. I set my laptop on the table, my fingers moving with practiced ease as I connected it to the projector. As the screen flickered to life, I turned to face the room. I've worked on this integration plan nonstop for the last few days, I began, keeping my voice calm. This is how we move forward. Together. I clicked to the first slide, displaying the outline of my plan. The details were precise, step by step, everything from the technical implementation to the financial forecasts. But more than that, I had woven in the human element, the collaboration between my team and theirs, the ways we would bridge the gap between their outdated practices and the innovations my technology could bring. Tatum interrupted before I could continue. You've been working with these people behind our backs, and now you expect us to just trust you? After everything that's happened? I didn't flinch. I'm not asking you to trust me, Tatum. I'm asking you to trust the future. My eyes moved back to Dad. He was studying the screen, his face impassive, but I saw something flicker in his gaze, just a hint of curiosity, maybe even admiration. He was still holding on to something, but I could tell he was teetering. The final decision was coming, and he knew it. Take a look at the numbers, I said, clicking to the next slide. This is how my system has already saved the company. These are the results, real, tangible savings. And this is where we can go. The integration will save even more. We're talking about efficiency that could make Clayton Textiles not just survive, but thrive. The numbers flashed across the screen, but this time, they weren't just numbers. They were the proof that my vision was real. My tech had turned struggling businesses into success stories, and now it was about to turn Clayton Textiles into a leader in the industry. We've reached a point, I continued, where keeping things the way they've always been isn't an option anymore. We either adapt or get left behind. And I'm offering you the chance to not just adapt, but to lead. I looked around the room, making sure everyone was paying attention. The silence that followed my words felt like it stretched on forever. The tension was almost unbearable. But I stood tall, unwavering, knowing that what I was offering wasn't just a business plan, it was a future. Dad stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. I braced myself, unsure of what he would say. But as he walked toward the screen, he didn't look angry. He didn't look disappointed. He looked thoughtful. You've made a compelling case. Nah, he said quietly. You've shown us what's possible. And I can't deny that you've proven yourself. This technology of yours, it's impressive. He paused, glancing over at the board members. Their faces were a mix of uncertainty and cautious optimism. Everyone was waiting for him to make the decision. I still don't like how you kept this from us, Dad continued, his voice hardening again. But I can see now that this isn't just about you. This is about all of us. You've built something that can save this company, and I'm not about to let my pride get in the way of that. I held my breath. Was he really about to say what I thought he was? I've always believed in tradition, he said, his eyes meeting mine. But you've shown me that tradition can't stand in the way of progress. I was wrong. We can't keep doing things the way we always have. It's time to embrace the future. A wave of relief washed over me. I had done it. I had proved my point, not with words, but with results. The family business was about to change. And for the first time in years, it felt like I wasn't just the daughter of the boss. I was the one leading the charge. I'm willing to do this, Dad said, his voice finally softening. But it's going to take time. We'll need to transition carefully. And you'll have to prove every step of the way that this isn't just a gamble. I'm ready for that, I said, my voice steady. I've already been proving it. Tatum looked like she had just swallowed a bitter pill. Her eyes flicked to Dad, then back to me, her expression unreadable. Fine, she said, her voice tight. But don't think this is over. You've changed things, maybe for the better, maybe not, but you'd better be ready for the fallout. I nodded, meeting her gaze. I'm ready. Dad turned to the board members. We'll begin the integration process next quarter. I'll be working with Na and her team to get this off the ground. But this is only the beginning. The room erupted into murmurs, some of the board members already discussing the next steps. But my focus was entirely on Dad. This wasn't just about business anymore. This was about taking control of my future, my life. And in that moment, I knew I had won. I stood, closing my laptop and gathering my things. Thank you, everyone, I said, my voice firm. I'll be in touch. As I walked out of the conference room, I felt a sense of satisfaction I hadn't known in years. I wasn't just the daughter anymore. I was the one who had changed everything. Story 2, I was facing the full-length mirror. For the 100th time, I smoothed my dress. The terrified, shattered woman I had been a few years prior was nothing like the image looking back at me. Max? He reminded me that if I didn't hurry, we would be late as his voice floated up from downstairs. Honey, are you coming? I returned the call, breathing deeply. It was a big night. It was our first meal together with his mother since we were married. I had only met Marianne once, at the wedding, and I felt like I had been dissected by her intense stare. As I went down the steps, Max's expression brightened. He pulled me in for a kiss and whispered, "You look gorgeous, Leah." I eased myself into his arms, relishing the sensation of security and affection, something that, before to him, I had never really understood. "Thank you," I whispered. "All I can hope for is your mother's approval." Max laughed. "She is not a concern. Once she knows you, she will adore you." I wish I had realized then how mistaken he was. It was a peaceful drive to Marianne's expansive Victorian house. Nerves are making my stomach turn. I saw the immaculately mowed lawn and the shiny Mercedes in the driveway as we drew up. "Are you ready?" Max squeezed my hand and asked. I put on the biggest smile I'll ever have and nodded. Perfectly styled and sporting a strand of pearls that likely cost more than our car, Marianne herself opened the door. As she kissed his cheek, she crooned, "Maxwell, darling." I cursed as her eyes slid to mine. 10 degrees was the dip in temperature. "It's good to see you again, Leah." I tried not to tremble as I added, "Thank you for having us, Marianne." As she brought us inside, I was astounded by the lavish furnishings. The walls were adorned with family pictures. We are looking down at generations of stern-faced men and women. "Dinner is almost ready," Marianne, Maxwell said. "How about pouring some wine?" Max was on his way to the bar cart. Marianne looked across at me. With a fake sweetness in her voice, she added, "So, Leah, describe your family to me. What is your dad up to?" I took a deep breath. "He's a construction worker. My mother works as a teacher." Marianne's mouth became thinner. "How charming. How about you? What do you do once more?" "I work as a social worker," I said, raising my chin. "I assist families in need." Her laughter was brittle. "Someone has to do it, I guess." Unaware of the tension, Max brought our drinks back. "What are we discussing?" "Oh, just learning more about your beautiful wife." Marianne spoke without a grin that extended to her eyes. "Dear, did you know that her father works in construction? That is intriguing, isn't it?" Max's face flashed with pain, but he immediately covered it up. "Mother, Leah's family is amazing. If you met them, you would like them." Marianne, non-committal, huh? "So, should we have some food?" Marianne asked me a lot of questions about my history throughout supper. They all felt like little jabs. I gave the most courteous response I could, but I was becoming impatient. "When can we anticipate having grandkids then?" Marianne abruptly put down her fork and asked. My wine suffocated me. "I apologize, kids, sweetheart. You two must be preparing to have children soon. You know Maxwell isn't getting any younger." Max cleared his throat. "We've only been married a few months, Mother." "That can wait till later." Marianne squinted her eyes. "No sense. We must continue to use the Caldwell name." "Leah, you do want kids, don't you?" With everyone watching me, I felt imprisoned. "We still haven't actually talked about it." I succeeded. "Well," replied Marianne sternly, "you'd better get to it. A lady of your age. Fertility is a transient state." Max cautioned Mother, but the harm was already done. My chair scraped the floor as I sprang to my feet. I screamed, "Pardon me," and ran to the toilet, splattering cold water in my face. I gazed at my own image. I had gotten myself into what, compared to the males in my previous sort, Max had seemed so different, encouraging, affection. But now that I could see his mother's obvious contempt, I questioned whether I had made a grave error. I was surprised by a gentle knock on the door. "Leah?" Max gave a call. "Are you all right?" I inhaled deeply, bracing myself. My spouse and I needed to have a serious conversation about our current situation and our true future together. It was a difficult few weeks after that fateful supper with Marianne. Max and I avoided each other like the plague. Every day, the elephant in the room becomes bigger. Max always came up with an excuse to shift the subject or leave the room, even though I knew we needed to communicate. One Sunday afternoon was when it all came to a head. Max's phone buzzed on the bedside table while I was folding laundry. I didn't mean to pry, but the name on the screen chilled me to the bone. Mom. The preview of the message appeared before I could turn away. "Have you yet to discuss children with Leah? There is not much time left." I put down the shirt I had been folding, my hands shaking. I yelled, Max, in a sharper tone than I had meant, with a suspicious look on his face, he emerged from the doorway. "What's the matter?" I gestured to his cell phone. "Would you mind telling me why your mother is texting you regarding our plans for reproduction?" Max's face went white. He swiftly grabbed the phone and read the message. "I can explain, Leah. Do it, please." I crossed my arms as I spoke, because it appears to me that you and your mother have been talking about our private lives behind my back. I had noticed his nervous habit of running a hand through his hair. "That isn't the case. She's just worried," I echoed incredulously, concerned. "She's obsessed, Max, and you're giving her the benefit. She has good intentions." He made a feeble protest. "All she wants is for us to be content." I let out a sour laugh. "Joyful? Do you think? Putting pressure on me to become a mother? I'm not ready for will make me happy." Max's expression hardened. "And when will you be ready, Leah? We're not getting any younger. Don't you desire a family?" His words hit me like a slap. "Of course I do," I added gently, "but on our terms, not your mother's. My mother has nothing to do with this," Max argued, but I could see the deception in his eyes. "Really? Then why is she messaging you about it? Why are you discussing our personal decisions with her at all?" Max's jaw tightened. "She's family, Leah. She has a right to know." "No," I cut him off. "She doesn't. It's just the two of us. At least it ought to be." We gazed at one another for a long time, the distance between us becoming larger by the second. At last, Max's voice was low and menacing. "My mother could be correct. Perhaps you aren't the best candidate to continue the Caldwell name." I flinched as though he had hit me. What is the intended meaning of that? "I'm beginning to question whether I made a mistake by marrying someone so different from us," he added softly. Suffocating and thick, the words hung in the air. My entire universe seemed to be swaying. Before my eyes, everything I believed to be true about my marriage fell apart. "Get out," I muttered. Max blinked. "What? Leave now!" I yelled and grabbed the closest item, a framed picture of our wedding day. "Throw it at him." He dodged as it broke against the wall. "With you here, I can't have the time I need to think." I briefly believed he may argue. He then grabbed his wallet and keys and gave a curt nod. "I'll spend tonight at my mom's," he added. "When we both cool down, we can chat tomorrow." I fell to the ground, encircled by the remains of our shattered picture frame, as the front door slammed behind him. How could things have gone wrong so fast? More significantly, what was I going to do at this point? When my phone buzzed, I instinctively reached for it. Marianne's text message appeared on the screen. Max explained what had transpired. "My darling, you're making a grave error. We'll resolve this when you visit tomorrow." I gazed at the text. A chilly rage is growing inside my chest. No longer being polite. Stop attempting to win over everyone. Even if it meant giving up all I believed I want, it was time to defend myself. My fingers trembled as I typed a response. "Marianne, don't get involved with my marriage. This is the only caution you have. I knew I had just declared war as I clicked submit, but I wasn't sure if I was prepared for the fight." The weeks after my run-in with Max were a haze of awkward silences and forced civility. Even though we had made an uncomfortable truce, there were still a lot of unspoken words between us. I was aware that we were each anticipating the other person's surprise. At last it did. Max put down his newspaper with a fake casualness and cleared his throat while I was drinking my coffee on a cool autumn morning. "Leah," he said in a deliberately bland tone, "I've been contemplating. Perhaps we ought to consult a fertility expert." My coffee almost suffocated me. "What?" Max leaned forward with serious gaze. "We're not growing any younger after all these months. I just believe that we should consider our alternatives." Marianne's unsaid pressure lingered in the atmosphere like a poisonous mist. A harsh clank sounded as I put down my drink. "We decided to wait, Max. I'm not prepared." "When are you going to be prepared?" His tone was tinged with annoyance when he interrupted. "Leah, we can't put this off indefinitely. You want a family, don't you?" Even though his remarks hurt, I made myself remain composed. "I do, of course, but according to our terms." "Not your mom's." Max tightened his jaw. "It has nothing to do with my mother. It's about us. Our future." I gave a sour laugh. "Is it because it seems like it's a way to satisfy Marianne's infatuation with carrying on the Caldwell line?" It's unfair. I could see the glimmer of shame in Max's eyes despite his protests. Is it not? I posed a challenge. So why the abrupt urgency? Why are we unable to let things unfold organically? Max's irritation was evident as he ran a hand through his hair, because time is not a luxury we possess. Look, I've already scheduled a visit with Dr. Reeves. She is the city's top fertility doctor. It seemed as if someone had hit me. What are you? Without even talking to me about it beforehand. Max's voice rose as he replied, I knew you'd react like this. I didn't tell you because of this. Leah, sometimes you need a little encouragement. A shove? With incredulity, I repeated. Max, this isn't a push. A shove off a cliff is what this is. Across the kitchen table, we exchange scowls. It seems like every second that goes by, the gap between us gets wider. I forced my voice to stay calm and finally took a long breath. All right, I'll attend the appointment, I responded. Max's expression brightened. Leah, really? That's fantastic. I silenced him by raising a hand. I'm not done yet. I'll go, but with a requirement. Your mother doesn't participate in this at all. No more talking about our personal lives. No more useful recommendations. It's just the two of us. I agree. Max paused, and I could see the strain on his face. At last, he agreed and nodded. The next week was the scheduled appointment time. I listened to Dr. Reeves describe the series of tests we would have to go through as I sat in her antiseptic office. The sense that I was losing control of my own life persisted. Max, however, was virtually bouncing with excitement. As we left the clinic, I sat silently as he barraged the doctor with inquiries about treatment alternatives and success rates. I felt a wave of nausea. I emptied my stomach before I had even reached a neighboring garbage bin. Leah, Max yelled and hurried up to me. Are you okay? I wiped my lips as an odd serenity descended upon me. I'm all right, I said. I suppose it's just nervousness. However, as Max assisted me to the car and eagerly discussed our next course of action, I came to a realization. The weariness and nausea I've been experiencing recently. Surely it couldn't be. I put a hand to my tummy, feeling both astonished and afraid. Everything was about to change, if I was correct, and I wasn't sure if I was prepared for it. With my heart racing, I glanced to Max as we drew into our driveway. I murmured, hardly raising my voice above a whisper, We need to talk. I believe I may be expecting a child. We were both excited and nervous on the day of our 20-week scan. Despite living in the same house and tiptoeing around each other like strangers, Max and I had seldom discussed the pregnancy. As we were seated in the waiting area, I could sense waves of stress coming from him. When the technician, Mr. and Miss S. Caldwell, called her, they were beaming and unaware of the tension between us. I took a seat at the exam table as we followed her into the darkened room. With his hands stuffed deep in his pockets, Max stood clumsily beside me. Are you prepared to meet your child yet? With a smile, the technician inquired. As she applied the cold gel to my tummy, I nodded, not believing what I was saying. I extended my hand to grasp Max's, due to habit. After a moment of hesitation, he took it. His hand relaxed uncomfortably. The quick whoosh, whoosh of our baby's heartbeat filled the room. In spite of everything, I started crying. I looked at Max and said, That's our baby. His gaze stared at the fuzzy image on the television, his expression inscrutable. Is everything typical? His voice was strained as he asked. With a nod, the technician ran the wand over my abdomen. Everything appears to be flawless. Do you want to know the sex? Max tensed up next to me. We hadn't talked about whether or not we wanted to know, but all of a sudden, I had to know. I firmly squeezed Max's hand and murmured, Yes, we want to know. Grinning, the technician adjusted the picture. Well done. You are expecting a female child. It seemed like the world was tilting on its axis. A female. My daughter. I experienced an overwhelming wave of affection that left me speechless. Max's hand, however, had become limp in mine. The sight on his face chilled my blood when I turned to face him. Anger and disappointment. Disgust, perhaps. A female. His voice was flat as he repeated. As we were leaving the clinic, the technician swiftly concluded the visit after seeing the change in our attitude. In the vehicle, the stillness between us was deafening. I was at my breaking point. Talk to me, Max. What's happening? His knuckles became white as he clamped down on the steering wheel. I suppose I was expecting for a boy, but it's nothing. Max, This is our daughter, our child. In what way may you feel let down?" He let out a deep sigh. "Leah, you don't get it. Sons have always been the eldest in my family. It's customary. It's anticipated. It seemed as if someone had hit me." "Who was expecting it? Your mom." Max tightened his jaw. "It has nothing to do with my mother. It has to do with preserving the Caldwell name, the heritage." Silently, I murmured, "Stop the automobile." "What? Stop the car!" I yelled. I struggled to fasten my seatbelt as Max pulled over. Max yelled after me as I staggered out into the pavement, gasping for oxygen. "Where are you going, Leah? I want to confront him." I'm torn between sadness and rage. I hissed at you. "How dare you? How dare you bring your antiquated, sexist expectations into this moment, this miracle? This is Max, our daughter, a part of us both that is alive and breathing. And perhaps you won't see how valuable that is. Perhaps we've made a grave error." Max's face became white. "Leah, that's not what you mean. Come on, let's discuss this when we get home." But I was already shaking my head and moving away. I am unable to return to that residence. Not at this moment. I need time to reflect. Max called out behind me in a panicked voice as I turned and left, but I didn't turn around. On my stomach, where my daughter, my ideal, gorgeous daughter, was developing, my palm lay protectively. I was very confident that everything had altered at that particular instant. The life I believed I want, the future Max and I had envisioned. Everything around me was falling apart, and I knew I had to make a decision as soon as the first tears started to flow. One that would impact not just my future, but also that of my daughters. Max kept trying to reach me on my phone, but I ignored it and stayed the night at my parents' place. I was hollowed out by dawn, but I was determined. I have to confront this directly. Max was waiting for me when I got home, his face a mask of remorse and worry. "I'm terribly sorry, Leah. It wasn't my intention." I silenced him by raising a hand. "We must speak. Not just now, though." "Isn't your mother coming over?" Max gave a bashful nod. I informed her of the baby. She was determined to attend. I steeled myself, but my stomach constricted. "All right, let's finish this up." Without knocking, Marianne came through our front door like a hurricane. With one hand resting on my barely noticeable bulge, she quickly narrowed her eyes as she took in my protective posture. "Well," she remarked, with a tone of contempt in her voice, "I've heard that congratulations are due. I can't claim, however, that I'm not disappointed." Max seemed tight next to me, but I was surprised when he spoke out. "Please, Mother, this is the child we are discussing." Marianne waved him away while keeping her eyes on me. "Maxwell, don't be naive. The Caldwell name will never be properly carried on by this girl. You are aware of what must be done." Deathly silence fell over the room. As her words took hold, I felt the blood drain from my cheeks. "Marianne, what are you saying?" Her voice trailed off to a whisper of conspiracy as she took a step closer. "There are solutions to handle this little issue that no one would ever have to know about, such as private clinics." Bile rose in my throat as I flinched back. "You're not serious. This is a granddaughter, your grandchild." The word came out of Marianne's mouth like a curse. "For our family, what good is that? No. Starting anew is preferable. For a legitimate heir, try again." Desperate for his help, I resorted to Max, but I felt sad for him because of the struggle on his face. I begged Max not to look at me in a whisper. Perhaps we ought to weigh all of our alternatives. Leah. The ground beneath my feet seemed like it was tilting. Wearing the features of my mother-in-law and spouse, I staggered back, separating myself from these strangers. I murmured, hardly raising my voice above a whisper. "Get out." Marianne grinned with victory. "Let's not rush now, sweetheart." "Get out," I replied. I yelled, causing you two to lose your composure. "You have no right to enter my house and advise that I kill my kid." Max's face became white as he grabbed for me. "Please, Leah, we are only conversing." I recoiled from his contact. "We're done talking, Max. Right now, I want you both to leave this house." Outraged, Marianne pulled herself up. "Maxwell, you can't talk to us like this. Keep your wife under control." However, Max appeared unable to make up his mind, caught between his mother and me at that very time. Something shattered inside of me. "I'll leave if you won't." My voice was unnaturally calm as I spoke. I picked up my keys and pocketbook and headed for the door. "Where are you heading?" With a hint of terror in his voice, Max yelled for me. At the threshold, I stopped. I put one hand on the doorknob and the other on my tummy. Somewhere secure, somewhere, no matter what, my kid will be appreciated and cherished. A weird calmness descended upon me as I left them dumbfounded behind and went away. All of a sudden, the choice I had been debating seemed obvious. My hands shaking, I climbed into my car and turned on the ignition as I backed away from the curb. Max was visible to me in the rearview mirror, looking bewildered, standing in the doorway. However, I didn't turn around. I was unable to. I had my eyes on the road. I have to protect myself and my kid in the future. Even if it meant giving up all I believed I desired, I would do whatever it needed to keep her safe. I was crying uncontrollably. I headed into an unknown future. However, one thing was for sure. The world would never be the same. I ignored Max's incessant calls and texts for the following week while I was at my parents' place. While my dad spoke about giving that youngster a lesson, my mom hovered nervously, but I wanted time to gather my thoughts and make plans for what to do next. Max texted me on the 7th day, which was the last straw that got beyond my barriers. "Let's chat, Leah, please. Anywhere is a good place to meet." I decided to meet him at a neutral place, against my better judgment, the park where our first date took place. Max was pacing and appeared to be worn and haggard as I got closer to our old favorite bench. "Leah." Relief washed across his cheeks as he exhaled. "I've been so anxious." I took a seat, avoiding close contact. "Max, say what has to be said." He combed through his unkempt hair. "I apologize. I really apologize for anything. By allowing my mother to control our lives, I have been a coward. However, I've had time to reflect, and now I know what matters. All that counts is you and our daughter. I wanted to think he was real. How I longed to, God. However, it still hurt to think of his quiet in the face of Marianne's brutality. It's simple, Max, but you failed to defend us when it counted most." His voice broke as he continued, "I know, and for the rest of my life, I will regret that. Give me an opportunity to correct it though, please. I've informed my mother that unless she can accept our family for what it is, she is no longer welcome in our life." My glimmer of hope was swiftly dashed by mistrust. What was her reaction to that? Max's expression grew glum. "Not very good. She wrote me out of the will by threatening to cut me off. But none of that matters to me. All that matters to me is you and our child." I got up because I had to get up and think. "Max, I'm not sure whether I can trust you. How can I be certain that this isn't simply another effort to appease me?" His eyes begged as he grabbed for my hand. "Join me at home. Allow me to demonstrate. The locks have been replaced, blocked the phone of my mother. We have our house back. No more meddling, no more exertion." I allowed him to bring me to his car against my better judgment. There were many whispered statements and unanswered questions throughout the anxious trip home. I was apprehensive as we pulled into our driveway. There was a problem. Max muttered about the new locks as he fumbled with his keys, and then the front door flew open. Marianne stood with a mask of righteous rage on her face. Then she spat. Returning as the wayward daughter-in-law. I spun around on Max. "My chest is burning with betrayal." "I didn't know," you said. Max objected. His expression was one of genuine amazement. "How did you enter here, Mother?" Marianne grinned and brandished a key. Naturally, I had a copy produced. "Did you truly believe that I could be removed from my son's life with so ease?" My palm automatically covered my tummy as I retreated. "I'm going." This was an error. Max tightened his hold on my arm. "Hold on, Leah. What I wanted was not this. I promise." Marianne moved on, her voice brimming with fictitious worry. "Let's not rush now, sweetheart. Here, we are all family. What's best for you and the child is all that we care about." Her use of the word child chilled me to the bone. My pulse was racing as I yanked away from Max. "Avoid me! You two!" I noticed a syringe in Marianne's palm as I turned to run. As realization hit, my blood froze. Control was no longer the only issue. The goal was to completely eradicate the issue. I yelled, fear taking hold of me. "Max, take action." However, Max remained still, caught between his wife and mother, his dilemma immobilizing him once more. I was genuinely alone at that very moment. and I realized it with horrible clarity. I had no one to save me. I would have to take care of myself if I wanted to keep my daughter and myself safe. I pushed past Marianne and ran, my excitement pumping. The only thing on my mind was to leave this nightmare as far away as possible. Max was yelling my name behind me, but I didn't turn around. I was done with second chances this time. I had to save myself now. With my heart racing and my breath coming in short gasps, I staggered inside my parents' house. Mom came running to me. She had a worried expression on her face. "Honey, Leah, what took place?" I described the horrific situation at Max's residence while crying. With every phrase, my dad's face became darker and his hands clenched at his sides. "That's all," he snarled. "I'm going to call the cops." "No." I grabbed his arm and sobbed. "We are unable to. Not quite yet. I really need assistance." My mother then brought up Paul. "Do you recall Paul Hawkins? He is currently a lawyer with a focus on family law. He might be able to assist." I was reminded of something by the name. A kind grin, an unwavering presence from my childhood. Desperate for a lifeline, I nodded. "Give him a call. Please." Paul showed up in less than an hour. His well-known face was now marked with wrinkles from worry and experience. His business-like manner softened when he saw me. Gently, he said, "Leah, we will fight for you and your kid, even though I'm really sad you're going through this." Paul turned to become my rock throughout the course of the next days. We combed through court filings, assembling a case for a restraining order against Max and Marianne in addition to a divorce. Paul's unfailing support and calm strength provided me the confidence to take on the challenges that were ahead. One evening, Paul said in a tight, urgent voice, "We have to move quickly. Max's relatives are connected. They may attempt to influence the system if we do not take action right away." I nodded, with an unusual combination of resolve and terror. "How do we proceed?" Leaning forward, Paul's gaze were keen. "We launch an offensive. I have proof of Marianne's intimidation, Max's cooperation. We'll submit a protective order application for immediate custody." But he stopped and took my hand. "Leah, are you prepared for the next step? It won't be simple." With a strong sense of protection, I covered my expanding tummy with my other hand. I must be prepared for her. Paul and I were getting ready to head to the courthouse the following morning when my phone buzzed with a message from Max. "Please don't do this. For the benefit of our family, we can resolve this." I presented the message to Paul. My hands are trembling. After reading it twice and scowling, he turned to face me. "Leah, this may be a trap. We must exercise caution." However, Max's remarks struck a chord with me. A tiny part of me still wished for the family I had imagined to be reunited in spite of everything. "I must see him," I said, hardly raising my voice above a whisper. One final chance to meet his gaze and make a definitive decision. Paul's expression grew tense. "It's not safe, Leah. Let me take care of this legally." "No." I broke off as a startling realization hit me. This is what I have to do for closure, for power. I must confront him according to my conditions. After a long pause, Paul grudgingly nodded. "Okay, but I'll accompany you, and this is how we do it. Controlled setting. There are witnesses." I had an odd serenity as we drove to the prearranged meeting spot, a bustling cafe in the middle of town. It was this. That would be the turning point in my life. The future of my daughter. As soon as we walked inside the cafe, I saw Max. As I walked up beside Paul and my partner, he appeared gaunt, his eyes red-rimmed and frantic. Max reached out to me as he stood. "Please, Leah." However, the cafe door exploded open before he could continue. Fury twisted Marianne's face as she rushed in. "What a sour little jerk you are," she screamed and sprang at me. Time seemed to slow down in that instant. I watched as my father took a protective step in front of me, and Paul moved to stop her. I was frozen in place, though, by Max's response. Torn between his wife and mother, he stood paralyzed once more, and as turmoil exploded all around us, I saw my future exposed by his hesitation. I made up my mind. Don't hesitate any longer. No more second chances. It was time to defend my daughter's right to life, whether Max is with me or not. Chaos broke out at the cafe. Marianne surged at me, her eyes blazing with anger, and her cry sliced through the air. Paul stepped quickly, putting himself between us as my father protectively drew me back. That's sufficient. The room became silent as Paul's voice roared. He turned to face Max, who was still, a mask of doubt covering his face. "I'll have your mother arrested for assault if you don't control her." Max grabbed Marianne's arm as he finally jolted out of his daze. "Stop it, Mum. You're creating a commotion." Marianne, however, was irrational. She fingered me accusingly as she yanked out of Max's hold. "Leah, you'll regret this. You will never see a dime of the Caldwell money, I promise." "That and you. You are holding that monstrosity." There was silence in the room. Everyone is watching us. Anger and a strong sense of protectiveness for my unborn daughter gave me a burst of power. I took a step forward. I spoke clearly and steadily. "I'm only going to say this once, Marianne, so pay close attention. I'm not interested in your money. Neither you nor your family have anything to offer me. What I want is for you to never again be around me or my child." Even as I said the words, my heart was hurting as I turned to Max. I had to say it, I knew. "And you, Max, I cherished you. I believed we would be together in the future. However, it's clear to me now that you'll never be able to resist her, to defend us." Max wrinkled his face. "Please, Leah, I'm malleable. We can resolve this." "No." With every syllable, my resolve became stronger as I interrupted. "We are unable to. I refuse to raise my daughter in a household where her gender determines her value, and she is viewed as inferior. She is worthy of better. I'm worthy of better." Paul came up and put his reassuring hand on my shoulder. "I have a restraining order and a pair of divorce papers here. Mr. and Mrs. Caldwell. If you don't sign them right now, we'll have to go to court about this. You don't want the specifics of your actions to be made public. I can tell you that." Marianne's face was flushed with rage as she stammered. To my astonishment, though, Max appeared to lose his enthusiasm. For the first time, I noticed a glimmer of comprehension in his eyes as he glanced at me and then at his mother. "Enough," he whispered softly, "Mother. It's finished." Max received the papers from Paul and signed them with trembling hands. Marianne screamed in disapproval, but Max's glance cut her off. "Mother is no longer with us. The moment has come to let go." Max stopped at the door as they were leaving the cafe, giving me one more glance. "I apologize, Leah. I wish for you to be happy." Then they vanished. I felt exhausted yet oddly light as the tension in the room subsided. Paul faced me, his eyes brimming with worry and another emotion I couldn't quite put my finger on. "Are you all right?" I put a hand on my belly and nodded. "We're all right. Both of us." I had a wave of calm as we exited the cafe, encircled by Paul and my parents' protective circle. I had optimism for the first time in months, even though the path ahead would not be simple. Paul gave my hand a little squeeze. "Leah, you were amazing in there. You are fortunate to be your daughter's mother." I grinned as my eyes pricked with tears. "I'm grateful for everything, Paul. Without you, I'm not sure how I would have survived this." He gave me a serious look while speaking in a quiet but confident tone. "Leah, you underestimate your strength. You would have figured something out. However, I'm happy I could help you." My daughter kicked me as we entered the sunshine, perhaps confirming my decisions. With a sigh of sheer pleasure and delight, I chuckled. "What is it?" Paul inquired, grinning at my unexpected laughter. I smiled and said, "Nothing. Only considering the future. Our future." And I started to get excited as we drove away, leaving the cafe and everything it stood for behind. For the first time in a long time, I was looking forward to the voyage with my daughter at my side and friends like Paul to support me, even if the route ahead was unknown. We could face anything, I knew. We had prevailed in the battle. It was time to begin living now.